We'll take you to the White House now. Here they are, the president and the first lady, getting ready to leave for Atlanta. He's speaking at a drug summit that is happening there. The president walked to the cameras and spoke to the media. This is tape playback, so it's not live. What ends up happening is the reporters are there, they get it, they put it in a machine, and then all the networks can take it at the same time. So the president, I can tell you already knowing what he's about to say, only took a few questions, and here it goes.
So the stock market and our country, from an economic standpoint, is doing the best probably it's ever done. We're hitting new highs again. We've hit new highs, I guess, close to or over 100 times since I'm president from the time of the election. Unemployment numbers are the best they've ever been, by far. We have almost 160 million people working today in the United States. That's more than we've ever had working in our country before. We're doing well on trade. We're doing well with China. Things are going good. I'm bringing the First Lady right now. She's worked very hard on the opioid crisis. We're down about 17% from last year, which is pretty amazing. We're down 17% with the opioid problem. It's a big problem. It's a big addiction, and we're handling it. The doctors are working with us. The labs are working. The clinics are working. The pharmaceutical companies are working with us. And we've made a tremendous amount of progress. John, go ahead. Well, the subpoena is ridiculous. I have been the most transparent president and administration in the history of our country by far. We just went through the Mueller witch hunt, where you had really 18 angry Democrats that hate President Trump. They hate him with a passion. They were contributors in many cases to Hillary Clinton. Hate him with a passion. How they picked this panel, I don't know. And they came up with no collusion, and they actually also came up with no obstruction. But our Attorney General ruled, based on the information, there was no obstruction. So you have no collusion, no obstruction. Now we're finished with it, and I thought after 2 years we'd be finished with it. No, now the House goes and starts subpoenaing. They want to know every deal I've ever done. Now, Mueller, I assume, for $35 million, checked my taxes, checked my financials, which are great, by the way. You know they're great. All you have to do is go look at the records. They're all over the place. But they checked my financials and they checked my taxes, I assume. It was the most thorough investigation probably in the history of our country. I think I read where they interviewed 500 people. I say it's enough. Get back to infrastructure, get back to cutting taxes, get back to lowering drug prices. That's what, that's what we should be doing. Well, we're fighting all the subpoenas. Look, these aren't like impartial people. The Democrats are trying to win 2020. They're not going to win with the people that I see, and they're not going to win against me. The only way they can maybe luck out, and I don't think that's going to happen, it might make it even the opposite, that's what a lot of people are saying, the only way they can luck out is by constantly going after me on nonsense. But they should be really focused on legislation, not the things that have been, this has been litigated, just so you understand. This has been litigated for the last 2 years, almost since I got into office. Now, if you want to litigate, go after the DNC, Crooked Hillary, the dirty cops, all of these things. That's what should be litigated, because that was a rigged system. And I am breaking down the swamp. If you look at what's happening, they're getting caught, they're getting fired. Who knows what's going to happen from now on, but I hope it's very strong. But if you look at drain the swamp, I am draining the swamp. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Weijia Jiang was standing there yelling questions at the president. She joins us now from the White House. So, Weijia, let's do a little bit of fact-checking. The president said that Mueller found there was no obstruction of justice, and he made that ruling. Is that true?
he kind of talked around it, and he made it seem like he acknowledged that ultimately it was his Attorney General, William Barr, who made that ruling, but he did say that the report found that there was no obstruction. He did not, however, specifically mention Robert Mueller coming to that conclusion because he knows that would be false. Mueller very specifically did not rule on the issue of obstruction, and that's why we're here now with House Democrats trying to come to their own conclusions, because there was a bit in the Mueller report in which he hinted that it's up to Congress to piece together these bits of evidence together, not necessarily the Attorney General, even though Barr took it upon himself to say that he did not believe there was enough evidence. But sure, President Trump many times, as we've seen on Twitter and certainly in person, has, emphasized that there's no collusion, no obstruction based on what the Attorney General has said. He said he's the most transparent president in history. True or false? Well, he is talkative, David. I mean, that is something that you can't deny. The President Trump operates as his own communications director, and he believes talking to the press in the way that he does equals transparency, but the two are very different. If we talk about the Mueller report, and something that the president has sort of taken pride in is that he did not exert executive privilege to withhold any portions of that report from the public. It was up to Barr, who decided which parts would be sort of redacted or withheld. But now it's a whole different story that all these investigations are going on, and we know that the White House is considering exerting that privilege moving forward. In fact, just a bit ago, senior advisor Kellyanne Conway was out here and said, yeah, that is an option on the table. And so on the one hand, President Trump says many times that he is the most transparent. He answers questions in a way that no other president has. He stops at gaggles and holds impromptu gatherings like no other president has. But in terms of, information and seeking information,
right.
Democrats say, look, the White House is infamous and has always been for stonewalling us when we try to find things out.
Yes, the president says he's going to fight all the subpoenas. Let's take Don McGahn, for example. He's been subpoenaed. The White House says we may exert executive privilege. Don McGahn doesn't work for the White House anymore. So the question is, can they stop Don McGahn from going to testify if Mr. McGahn wants to?
Well, the lawyers say that that's certainly a possibility, and that's why they are now looking at all their legal options to do that. And McGahn himself has made the point that he was not the president's attorney, personal attorney, that is, that he was working for the office of the presidency, something that he took very seriously. And so, he has a duty as well. And, it's not likely he wants to be held in contempt of Congress. So we're going to have to wait to see what McGahn wants to do, chooses to do, but the White House here says even if he wants to, perhaps he won't be able to, and that's going to be tied up in court very likely.
Weijia, the president also mentioned that he assumes Mueller checks his taxes and his finances. Is there anything to indicate that that's true? Anything in the Mueller report to indicate Mr. Mueller looked at the president's finances? It's not spelled out explicitly, but this has been an ongoing issue with President Trump. And even though he says, oh, they're everywhere, my records are everywhere, the fact is they're not. And in fact, his attorneys just filed a lawsuit on behalf of him and his businesses to block a subpoena from Congress, from House Democrats who want to see years of financial records. Now, this is not just because they want to know who he's doing business with, of course, but because it's part of the president's brand, that he is this mega businessman, that he makes so much money, and there is a chance that that's just not true. The subpoena is ridiculous is probably the first headline he made when he stepped to the podium. We see he and the First Lady boarding Air Force One now. They're headed to Atlanta. What are they going to do?
They're talking about the administration's ongoing efforts to combat the opioid crisis. And again, when Kellyanne was out here, she tried to pivot and focus attention on that. It's something that the president and First Lady work on together. In fact, they don't typically work on things together. She keeps her own profile, but this is something that they will speak about at a summit down in Atlanta and address, the crowd there. So, he actually had the opportunity to talk about it, and he briefly mentioned it, but he really wanted to air his grievances again about the subpoenas, about the investigation. So he didn't even talk at length about what they were going to do down in Atlanta. He came out, he talked about the stock market, he talked about, how innocent he is once again, but that is what they'll be doing down there today in Georgia.
Weijia Jiang, thank you as always.
Thanks, Dave.